And that story is meant to reflect to us the heart of God, that if you feel far from him, if you feel like he's disappointed in you, he's not. He loves you and he wants to welcome you back. And I'm reminding myself of that too. Like, he's not disappointed in you. He's not mad at you. He simply wants a relationship with you. And in any moment we can turn back to him and have that. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today's video, like you can see from the title, I'm going to be talking about how to get out of a spiritual slump. And I've kind of mentioned this on YouTube and also over on my Instagram, but I feel like that's honestly just the place that I've been in probably for a handful of months now. And that's not to say there haven't been kind of more high points within that, but I do feel like for a while now I've kind of just been in a little bit of a spiritual slump. And I've talked about this topic on my channel before in different ways, but for today's video specifically, I want to talk about how to get out of a spiritual slump, not because I'm now on the other side of that, but because I'm very much still working my way through that. And I want to kind of invite you into the process in that and just share what I've been going through and things I've been doing to try to get out of it, because I know that I'm definitely not alone in this. I'm going to be kind of sharing again why I feel like I've been in a spiritual slump, but I do just want to say off the bat that this is something that all Christians go through. Even your pastor, even your favorite Christian influencer, everybody goes through this. I know that I put out a lot of Bible study content here on YouTube and I absolutely love doing that. We've been going through Esther right now and it's been so good, but I feel like in me putting out Bible study content all the time, it could be really easy to look at even me and think that I'm just constantly on this spiritual high or that I never struggle to read my Bible. But as I've shared before, that's simply just not the case. Again, we all go through this as Christians, and so I kind of just wanted to again invite you into this aspect of what it looks like to have a relationship with Jesus and just share what I've been learning in that. So I did put this up on Instagram sharing that I was going to be making this video and asked for any of your questions of things specifically you wanted me to touch on within it. And I am going to be kind of trying to answer your questions as I share my own experience. And so in this video, again, I'm going to be sharing kind of why I'm here and kind of signs of being in a spiritual slump, and then also practically what I've been doing to try to get out of it. But before we get into that, I thought it would be fun to make this video kind of just like a casual bake and chat hangout time. And I actually have to make some cookies for an event we're going to later with some friends. And so let's make some chocolate chip cookies and have this chat with cookies. If you want to make them with me, please feel free. Baby is craving some cookies. So let's head to the kitchen and then we will chat. Also, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. I make Bible study content like I mentioned and also Christian lifestyle content, and then give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful or encouraging. Alrighty, so we are going to be making the perfect chocolate chip cookie. I got this recipe from someone who shared it. I want to say it was Allison Bickerstaff who shared it, and I made it one time before, and guys, it is seriously just the most perfect classic chocolate chip cookie. It's got like the little bit of crisp on the outside, but then chewy, gooey deliciousness. And so that's what we're gonna be making. And to make it, I'm so excited to be using my new bakeware from Caraway Home. I've got it here in the box. I'll unbox it with you guys. But we actually registered for the Caraway Home cookware when we were getting married and setting up our wedding registry and all of that. And honestly, I just wanted it at first because I kept getting like the Instagram ads for it, and I thought that it was just such a beautiful cookware set. But then as I was researching more, I learned that it's actually also 100% non-toxic. And as you guys know, I've been trying to make this switch over to just cleaner, non-toxic products. And I feel like with kitchen appliances, that can be an easy thing to just not think about in all of that, because it's not like something we're putting on our body, but it's literally cooking and touching the food that we're eating and putting in our bodies. And so it's so important. And literally we use our cookware set every single day. Even if we don't cook dinner at home, we always make breakfast here, and we use it every single day for eggs. And it's like miraculous to me how non-stick it is. Like, I feel like you literally can't get things to stick to it if you wanted to, and it just cleans so easily. And so I was super excited when they said that they were going to send me their bakeware set, because I love it. So both their cookware sets and their bakeware sets come with organizers at no extra cost, that you can organize the different like lids and pots and pans and baking sheets and all of that. And it's so perfect, especially living in an apartment with, as you can see, not the biggest kitchen in the world. It just really helps to keep things organized and just all compact and everything. And so this honestly is a perfect thing if you're looking to make an investment for your kitchen. These pieces are durable and long lasting, and again, just good for your health, good for your eyes, because they're beautiful, and it would also make a perfect gift for maybe like a new college student or a newlywed couple. And so I do have a discount link down below that'll get you 10% off if you want to check that out. But let's get to making some cookies. Comment below if you're like a clean as you go person or like a make a big mess, clean it all up at the end person. I'm definitely clean as I go. So the trick with these cookies is you're gonna want to cook them more because you're gonna think, oh, they don't look quite done, but you want them just like slightly brown around the edges, and then you let them sit for 2 minutes, and then trust me, they're perfect. All right, we are back. I've got my oat milk and the cookies here. I just need to show you guys these cookies, literally. Look at how ooey gooey perfect, and it's taste test time. Those are so good. So like I said, I'm going to have that cookie recipe linked down below. And then also if you want to check out any of the Caraway Home cookware or bakeware products, which I highly recommend, I have a discount link as well that I'll have below. But now let's go ahead and get into the heart of this video, which is how to get out of a spiritual slump. And like I said, I'm going to start with talking about why I've been in a spiritual slump. One of the questions I got a lot over on Instagram when I put this out there is, what do you think contributed to it? And then also, what are some signs of being in a spiritual slump? And so hopefully as I'm talking through sort of what the factors have been for me, it can be helpful to you to either identify maybe what it's been for you if you're in a spiritual slump, or just what are some signs of that, or even kind of how to prevent it by hearing different things that have contributed to it, though not all of these things are things you can control, or even bad things, which you'll see here in a second. But I do have some notes. Sorry, I'm like so out of breath. Pregnancy, it's different. But I'm just gonna kind of go through them because I didn't want to forget anything. The first thing is that there has been a lot of change in my life over the past short amount of time. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I used to put out a lot of content on singleness, and I do still try to put out videos on it here and there as well. I even wrote an entire devotional on singleness, just speaking encouragement into that season. If you want to check it out, I'll have it linked down below. But the reason for that is because I was single for most of my 20s, and I just got married back in November, a month after I turned 29. And so again, I spent a long time single, a lot of years where it felt like there just wasn't a lot of change, and God was doing stuff in me and through me. But in terms of like the external circumstances and in my life, a lot of things looked the same from year to year. And I remember being in that, reading through the book of Esther, ironically, because we're doing the Bible Study With Me series through that now, and realizing that when you read through the story, the first, I think it's the first 5 chapters of the book, maybe the first 4, those all happen within a time period of 5 years. And then the second half of the book, all of those events happen within 48 hours. And as you're reading through it, you might not catch that because you just read through it as one story, but you kind of have to find those little verses that say like 5 years have passed. And it just made me realize like, wow, like there was a long period of time where nothing was really happening, where God was kind of setting the stage, setting things in motion, and getting things just so that when the time came, all of these events could unfold so quickly. And I remember realizing that during that season of singleness, and just kind of encouraging my own heart with that realizing that oftentimes throughout scripture, the way God works is that he moves slowly, or works slowly, and then sort of all at once. And so as I felt like nothing was changing, I was believing that, you know what, God is working even when I can't see it. And then the funny part is I feel like I've been just experiencing the truth of that in the past 2 years, because basically come November, when our little baby is here, it will be a period of probably a little bit more than 2 years. Tyler and I will have started dating, gotten engaged, gotten married, gotten pregnant with our first baby, 30 and had our first baby. And so again, a lot of change in a very short amount of time, and all of it is so good and everything that I've prayed for. But even in that, even in good change, I feel like sometimes it can almost feel like hard to keep up with in terms of just processing it all and all of that. And so I feel like that was kind of like one first part of it. And I think with any change, anytime you have a change of just routine or any like circumstances, any of that, for me, it can always kind of take a minute to find a new rhythm in terms of my own routines and like specifically quiet time routine and reading the Bible and stuff like that. And so I remember even with Tyler and I first getting married, it took a minute to kind of find a new rhythm because I had my routine as an individual, but then now merging our routines and wanting to spend time having breakfast together, and then also both of us doing our quiet times and stuff. And so it took a minute to kind of find a new rhythm with that. And then I feel like we did find our rhythm, and then that's when we got pregnant, which I've shared in a video before. Again, I just think with any change of seasons or anything, it can take a minute to find a new rhythm. And I feel like in sort of that process of recalibrating and finding that new rhythm for me, I lost the discipline of not going on my phone before I read my Bible in the mornings. And this is something that has been like a really important rule for me for a long time. And again, nothing that I've ever kept perfectly, but something that I've always really tried to adhere to, because I just know for me, the second I go on my phone in the morning, it's game over. It's so hard to try to like reel myself back in after that, because I'm now thinking about to-do lists and things I want to post and emails I need to respond to. And so to try to reel that all back in and quiet my heart to spend time with God is so difficult, and it's so hard to fight distraction. And I feel like just kind of within all the change of the last several months, I personally kind of lost that discipline, and I've had to start telling Tyler in the mornings, like, don't let me go on my phone, because he's so good about that. He doesn't really do social media or any of that, and he's really good about not checking things before having his quiet time, but I am not. And I just feel like I've honestly been fighting so much distraction. And so just kind of one practical thing, I've shared this before in actually like an entire video I did on how to beat distraction when you're like trying to read your Bible and praying. One practical thing from that is to not go on your phone before spending time with God in the mornings. And I have more like practical tips and stuff in there, but I think that was part of it too, was losing that discipline. And I think it's easier sometimes to just scroll than to try to spend time with God, because spending time with God does require more of like a emotional, mental energy and focus and discipline rather than just kind of scrolling and mindlessly consuming. And with that, I feel like something I've been realizing is honestly just how much of an addiction social media can be. And I shared this a little bit in the first trimester recap video as well, but I feel like for me, I'm most fulfilled in my relationship with social media when I'm doing it more to create and to share and to just put out, hopefully the goal is to always put out encouraging content. And when I'm just kind of consuming and like taking in other people's lives without also creating and contributing, then it just leads to comparison and stuff. But I've truly realized like how much of an addiction social media can be, and how important it is for me to have those boundaries around it, and not even just social media, but my phone in general. And so again, the like no phone before Bible in the mornings is a really important one. And then also something I want to get back to doing is having one day a week where I just don't go on it at all. I might also make an entire video on just kind of like social media boundaries and all of that, because I think it's a really powerful thing that has a grip on a lot of us, and we're kind of the first generation that's really like grown up with all of this. Like for me, I got a Facebook at the end of high school and Instagram in college, and even like, you know, the generation right behind me, it's like they really grew up with it. And so I think that if we're going to do it well and use it for the good that it can be used for, we do need to learn how to just have appropriate boundaries with it, which is just a side note. So anyways, it was that, the distraction, and then in getting pregnant, and like I shared a lot in the first trimester recap video, just all my symptoms and not feeling well and the fatigue and really the nausea. In constantly not feeling well, I feel like it made it even harder to fight distraction in my time with God, and that's something that I was already kind of struggling with. And so that is a factor. The other thing I kind of realized is just how much I used to like shower myself with edifying content, and let me explain that a little bit more. Before COVID, I was commuting to work for my full-time job, and it was about like a 35 to 40 minute commute. And I was just like constantly every day I would listen to a sermon on my drive or worship music and be listening to that during the more like mindless parts of my work as well. And then just being at home and not having that commute, like simple little things, it's easier to just throw on a YouTube video while I'm cooking breakfast or whatever. And I've realized like not having just like that continual stream of saturating my mind with content that is reorienting my heart towards God, I think I've just started to realize the effect that that's had. And I didn't really realize before how much of a positive effect it was having when I was doing those things until I started to see the effect of not, if that makes sense. I've shared this analogy before, but just think of a stone that's like in a stream, or like a big rock that's in a stream, and there's this water that's just constantly running over it, and so it's super smooth. That stone didn't become smooth because one drop of water hit it one time, or little drops of water hit it inconsistently at different times, but that stone became smooth because water was continually and consistently rushing over it. And so I think this has just reminded me how important it is to, again, be saturating our hearts and our minds with truth, with content that is going to be just directing our hearts toward God, because that is going to be giving shape to our hearts and our minds and our thought life. And it is going to contribute to a sense of feeling close to God, or even just getting us in that discipline and rhythm of wanting to seek Him and spend time with Him. And then the last thing that I feel like I've realized has been a contributing factor is just that the past couple years, things have felt relatively good. You know, that's not to say there haven't been any lows or difficult things, but overall, God has just been answering so many prayers, and I feel like it's really been a season of fulfillment in a lot of ways. I think that all throughout my 20s, as I was single and longing for a husband, like there were obviously other good things happening in my life and things that I was thankful for, and even within that, ups and downs of like going through good seasons and hard seasons and all of that. But underneath it all and underlying all of that, there was always kind of this continual prayer and longing in my heart of, God, when are you going to bring my husband into my life, and yearning for that. And it was, I feel like, this prayer that really kept me dependent on God and pressing into Him. And I think it's true that oftentimes we do experience an intimacy with God that we, in those difficult times or in those times of yearning and waiting and longing, that we don't always experience in the same way when things are good. And that's not to say that God is further. He is always near to us, but I think we experience His nearness when we feel that desperation to see Him move, and when we're just asking like, God, why? And I just think of the verse Psalm 34:18 that says God is near to the brokenhearted. And I think it's a truth in our spiritual lives that oftentimes when we're just going through something or we're sitting in uncertainty, it does cause us to be more dependent on God. And that's the place that we're designed to be. Like, we're not designed to be independent, self-sufficient, not reliant on Him, but it can be easy to think that we are when things are going well. And so I think that's kind of been another thing that I've realized in that it's been a blessing that things have kind of been good over the past couple years, but it's also not made me feel dependent on God in the same way, which I don't like and I don't want. And ironically, like, there's just things going on in mine and Tyler's lives right now that I do think there's going to be more uncertainty in these next couple months, and already in just the beginnings of that, I see that creating more of a dependency in me on God. And so I just share that to say that, you know, I think we all long for those good times in life, but if you are going through a difficult time, not to say that it's not difficult and that we don't want God to answer those prayers, because we absolutely do, but to just remind all of us that the blessing in those times is that dependency on God that it creates if we allow it to, and the intimacy with Him, but also that that's not only available to us in those times, that we can be seeking Him and pressing in during the good times as well. I feel like that was a lot of blabbering, so I'm gonna go back to my notes. This video isn't super long. But yeah, with all of those contributing factors, I feel like a lot of the past couple months, there's just a lot of days where I feel like in my quiet times, because I still am having a quiet time, but I feel like a lot of times it's me just kind of checking it off the list and going through the motions. And I feel like that's just kind of what has all contributed towards being in a spiritual slump. Yeah, so that's been kind of my experience. Now kind of how to get out of it, and there's really only kind of two main points I want to share within this. And the first thing that I have realized and learned in just feeling this like frustration of like, oh, I just feel like I'm in this slump and there's some good days, but then I'm kind of back to it. The first thing I've realized is to just keep showing up. I think that our culture has fed us this big lie that we should just do what we feel like doing and that we shouldn't force ourselves to do anything that we don't want to do, but that's simply just not true. In life, the reality is that there's going to be some things that you need to do that you don't feel like doing. I think about me, the season that I'm in right now, like we're preparing to welcome our first baby, and everybody talks about the sleepless newborn stage and the middle of the night feedings, and I guarantee that there's going to be plenty of times that I don't feel like waking up at midnight and then 3 a.m. to feed my baby, but that obviously doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it. And so I think it is a lie of culture that we just shouldn't do it or shouldn't force ourselves to do things if we don't want to do them. I think that anything worthwhile or meaningful in life, it does require work, and it does require discipline, and it does require doing things when we don't feel like doing them. And oftentimes that's what's going to be best for us anyways. I think about working out or eating healthy, or again, any of the things that lead to life. And while I do think that it's really important to not get into a legalistic mindset in terms of reading our Bibles and prayer and just seeing it as something where it's like we have to do this to be a good Christian, like no, we don't want that legalistic mindset. On the other side of things, I think it's important to remember that while doing those things will never earn us favor with God, like we don't earn His love, He has given it freely to us. While doing those things will never earn us favor with God, they do allow us to experience the love that He has for us. Like going back to the analogy with the mom and the newborn baby and the feeding, like in that analogy, we aren't the mom feeding the baby. We are the little baby whose very vitality is dependent on intimate connection with that mom. And in John 15:4, Jesus says that apart from me, disconnected from me, you can do nothing and you can bear no fruit. And I know that all of us long for love, for joy, for peace, for all of these good things in our lives, but those things are fruit of the Spirit, and we cannot possess those things apart from intimate connection with God. He literally is our life source. And so we don't force ourselves to keep showing up and keep trying to spend time with God and pressing into Him because He is going to be mad at us if we don't, but rather we do those things because we realize that we're going to be the ones who are missing out unless we do. And so I think we have this idea sometimes that we shouldn't just go through the motions in terms of showing up and trying to read our Bible and pray when we don't feel like doing it. But honestly, I think that sometimes that's exactly what we need to do, is continuing to show up, realizing that our feelings are going to ebb and flow. But in any relationship, if you want to maintain that closeness and that connection, it matters to keep showing up when you feel it and when you don't. And so we need to show up on the days that we feel like it and on the days that we don't also, and just continually ask for God's help and trying to just bring our hearts into it as well. The second encouragement I would offer, I guess, in terms of how to get out of a spiritual slump is to remember what is at stake. Just, if you are in a spiritual slump and you've been in that for a while and you just feel discouraged, I know how discouraging that can feel and how tiring it can feel. And as much as there's practical factors that might be contributing to that, remember that it's also spiritual. In Mark chapter 2, there's this story of this man who is paralyzed, and his friends want to bring him to this place where Jesus is teaching and preaching, but the room where Jesus is in is so crowded and so full that the doors are blocked off and there's no way to enter. So the friends instead come up with this brilliant idea that they're literally going to cut a hole in the roof and lower their friend down to the place where Jesus is speaking. And this story always touches me because I'm like, they went to such drastic measures to get their friend to Jesus, and you have to believe that that stemmed from a belief in them that, man, if we can just get him to Jesus, if we can just get our friend to Jesus, then everything is going to change. And that story always encourages me because it reminds me just how powerful it is to spend time with Jesus. And we think it's just such a simple thing and a checkbox thing of spending time with him and praying and stuff. But if we truly realize the power and the life that comes from that, man, there's so much at stake there. And I think it's important to remember that in the same way those guys knew, like, man, if we just get our friend to Jesus, everything is going to change. in the same way they knew that, the enemy of our souls also knows that. Like, the enemy will do anything to keep us distracted, to keep us from spending time with Jesus, because he also knows that if we can just get to Jesus, everything will change in the best way. And he doesn't want that for us. And so I think it's helpful to remember too that there is a spiritual element here, and to just be praying and realizing that, yeah, the enemy doesn't want that for you, because he knows it is so good for you and so necessary, and again, so vital to your well-being. And the other thing I've realized in this is just being in this spiritual slump. I've just seen in my own heart that I feel like I am so much quicker to fall into comparison. I'm so much quicker to assume negative intent in people, and just these different negative qualities I'm seeing in my own heart that I feel like weren't there as much before. And I think I've realized in that, like, wow, any of the good in me and the opposite of those qualities, just being quick to call out the good in people, or not falling into comparison as quickly, or just being more positive in my mind overall, like, none of that was ever me. Like, anything good in me is Jesus, and apart from him, like, I can do nothing good. I have no good fruit. And I feel like in not being as connected to him, or feeling as connected to him, it's more of me that is being revealed, and it's not pretty. Like, anything good in me is Jesus. And that's just kind of another realization I wanted to share. And then the other thing I wanted to share is that if you feel disconnected because you haven't spent time with God, don't think that God is just sitting there disapproving of you for being a bad Christian. Like, no, he misses you, and he, in every moment, eagerly waits to welcome you home. I think that sometimes when we're in this spiritual slump, it can be easy to feel like, man, God's just disappointed in me. He's mad at me. And it creates a sense of shame that discourages us for turning back to him. But we have to remember the heart of a father, the heart of our Father, who literally in every moment eagerly waits to welcome us home. This is reflected in Luke 15, the story of the prodigal son. Literally, this guy has a son who says, basically, Dad, I wish you were dead. Can I have my inheritance now? And he goes off and he squanders it, and he's like afraid to return home. But when he does, the father is waiting and runs out to meet his son and literally throws this party welcoming him home. And that story is meant to reflect to us the heart of God, that if you feel far from him, if you feel like he's disappointed in you, he's not. He loves you and he wants to welcome you back. And I'm reminding myself of that too. Like, he's not disappointed in you. He's not mad at you. He simply wants a relationship with you. And in any moment we can turn back to him and have that. And so that is the other thing I wanted to share. I also got another question from somebody who was saying, like, man, when you're going through this, like, should you go to your friends to, ask them for help, or should you just go straight to God? And I think the answer is both. Like, we should be talking to God. We should be praying to God and being honest with him about what it is we're going through and what we're experiencing and stuff. But it's not an either or. Like, he also gives us community and people to walk this walk with, that we're called to do the Christian life in community and not in isolation. And so absolutely go to friends, be inviting them into this, tell them about your struggles, allow them to pray for you. I know that not everybody may feel like they have that Christian community, and I encourage you to do what you can to get plugged into a local church, to serve, to build those relationships, because we weren't meant to do this life alone. And I also want to mention as well, I always have linked down below a discount link and code for BetterHelp. It's Christian counseling. Again, because we weren't meant to do this alone, and I don't think that counseling should ever replace in-person Christian community, but I do think it can be a great supplemental tool if you just have things that you need to talk through with somebody. It'll be linked below if you want to check that out. But anyways, this is probably way longer than I intended it to be, so I'm gonna wrap this video up here. But I hope that it has just been encouraging to you if you're going through a spiritual slump, even just to know that you're not alone. And hopefully there were some practical things in here to help you as you work to get out of that. But I just want to encourage you again to just keep showing up, to not give up on that, to keep pressing into God. James 4:8 says that when we draw near to God, he will draw near to us, and that is a promise. I also want to share some related videos that I've made kind of on this topic to answer more of the questions I got, because I think there were some questions I got on more specific things within this topic that I've made entire videos on. So I just want to let you know I have those. I have one on how to love reading the Bible. If you feel like you just don't love reading the Bible, I have a whole video on that. I also have one on abiding in Jesus, just how to stay connected to him, talking about John 15, that Bible study, and then also how to beat distraction in prayer and reading the Bible, and then what to do when you don't feel close to God. I have a whole video on that. And then also this idea of, if I thought God was in it, then why did it turn out this way? And just, you know, when we go through those times where we feel like God's really moving in a situation and then it didn't have the outcome we wanted, and we almost feel this betrayal or sense of distrust towards Him, I have a whole video speaking into that. And so all of those videos are going to be linked down in the description as well if you want to check them out and just kind of dig more into those topics. But thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I hope that it was helpful and encouraging to you. If it was, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and then leave a comment down below letting me know things that you've done when you've been in a spiritual slump, or if you are in a spiritual slump, to just help you out of that, or even just encouragement speaking into this that other people can read as they are going through it. But again, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.